A little black girl with empty pockets begged a shopkeeper, "I promise I'll pay when I grow up, but please, my baby brother needs milk." Everyone laughed at her, except for one silent millionaire. And the next thing he did shocked the entire store. Let's continue this story. The little girl's voice trembled as she stood on her tiptoes, clutching the edge of the counter. "Please, sir, I promise I'll pay you when I grow up. I just need a bottle of milk for my baby brother." Her dark eyes were wide, filled with both fear and hope, and her tiny hands shook as if she already knew the answer would be no. The shopkeeper frowned, impatiently tapping his fingers on the counter, ready to shoo her away. People behind her muttered about the line moving slowly, some annoyed, some simply curious. To them, she was just another poor child begging for something she couldn't afford. But to one man standing in the corner, watching silently, that trembling little voice struck deep into his heart like a bell ringing in the quiet night. The man was Marcus Landon, a millionaire known in the city not only for his wealth, but for his cold, untouchable demeanor. People said he had built an empire with nothing but his sharp mind and iron fists, but in the process, he had lost his ability to feel. He rarely smiled, never stopped to listen, and treated the world like one big business deal. But today, for reasons he couldn't explain, his steps had slowed as he entered the small neighborhood store. His expensive shoes clicked against the cracked tiles, his tailored coat a sharp contrast to the worn-out jackets of the struggling families around him. He wasn't supposed to be here. He had no reason to visit such a modest place. Yet fate had pulled him into this moment, right when the little girl whispered those unforgettable words. Marcus narrowed his eyes as he looked at her. She couldn't have been more than 9 years old, her hair braided unevenly, her shoes mismatched, her dress patched in too many places to count. But it was her dignity that stunned him. She wasn't begging for money. She wasn't crying or falling to her knees. She was making a promise, an innocent vow, that someday, somehow, she would repay. It was absurd, yet so sincere that it left the wealthy man unsettled. The shopkeeper sighed, shaking his head, and barked, "No money, no milk. Go ask your mama to come pay. Don't waste my time." The girl bit her lip, lowering her gaze, and for a moment it seemed she would just slip away quietly. But then, with a courage far bigger than her small frame, she lifted her chin and repeated, "I said I'll pay when I grow up. Please, my baby brother is hungry. He hasn't had anything since last night." Her voice cracked, but her eyes didn't lose their spark. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Something about her words dragged him back in time, to a memory he had buried deep. He too had once been a hungry boy, standing outside a store, hoping someone would notice. He too had known the weight of responsibility, trying to protect a younger sibling when the world turned cold. And he too had heard the word no more times than he could count. That familiar sting came rushing back, and for the first time in years, Marcus Landon felt human. The muttering customers turned their attention back to their shopping, assuming the child would leave. But Marcus stepped forward, his deep voice breaking the silence. "How much is the milk?" he asked. The shopkeeper looked up, startled. It's just $2, sir," he replied quickly, his tone suddenly respectful when he saw who was speaking. Marcus pulled out a crisp bill and placed it on the counter without hesitation. Then, kneeling down so he was eye level with the little girl, he handed her the bottle of milk. She looked at him, her eyes widening with disbelief. For a second, she didn't even move. Then, clutching the bottle tightly against her chest, she whispered, "Thank you, mister. I promise I'll pay you back someday." Her voice shook with gratitude, and Marcus almost smiled. "Almost. Don't worry about it," he said softly, standing back up. But the girl's words echoed in his head long after she ran out of the store, her small figure disappearing into the winter evening. "I'll pay you back someday." The promise of a child, ridiculous yet powerful, lingered in his mind like a song he couldn't forget. What Marcus didn't know was that this was not just a random encounter. This small moment, in a small store, with a small girl asking for milk, would become the turning point of his life. It would test his heart, challenge his beliefs, and reveal truths he had long hidden even from himself. Because that little girl, with her desperate courage and pure words, was about to change everything. As Marcus walked out of the store, the wind biting against his face, he felt strangely restless. He had spent years building walls around his heart, convincing himself that money was the only shield he needed. But tonight, a child's innocent promise had slipped through those walls like sunlight through a crack. He told himself it was nothing, just a moment, just a bottle of milk. But in the depths of his soul, Marcus Landon already knew his life would never be the same again. The cold night air cut across the girl's face as she ran home clutching the milk tightly, her tiny legs moving as fast as they could. The bottle wasn't just milk, it was hope. She burst into the small apartment she called home, where the lights barely worked and the heater rattled more than it warmed. On a thin mattress in the corner, her baby brother whimpered weakly. Their mother sat beside him, worry etched deep into her tired face. When she saw her daughter walk in with the bottle, tears filled her eyes. "Aisha, where did you?" The woman's voice cracked. She knew they had no money left, not even a penny. "I promised him I'd pay when I grow up," Aisha blurted out proudly, setting the bottle into her mother's hands. She didn't even notice how heavy those words sounded to an adult. To her, it was simple. When she became older, she would work hard, earn money, and repay the kindness of the stranger who helped them. Their mother pulled her into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, my brave girl," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You carry burdens a child shouldn't have to carry." But Aisha didn't see it as a burden. To her, it was love. Love for her baby brother, love for her struggling mother, and a dream that someday their lives would be better. Meanwhile, Marcus Landon returned to his penthouse apartment high above the city, where the view of glittering skyscrapers stretched endlessly. The marble floors reflected the glow of chandeliers, the leather couches sat untouched, and the silence was deafening. He lived surrounded by luxury, but that night the place felt emptier than ever. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, but even the burn of the drink couldn't drown out the memory of that little girl's trembling voice. He sat by the window, staring at the skyline, replaying her words again and again. "I promise I'll pay when I grow up." It made no sense. Why was a child's silly vow haunting him? He tried to push it away, telling himself he had done a simple act of charity and nothing more. Yet his heart felt strangely unsettled, as if her words had unlocked something he'd long forgotten. The next day, Marcus found himself distracted during a business meeting. Numbers and proposals blurred on the screen in front of him. His partners talked about profits and expansion, but his mind kept drifting back to the small store, to the girl with the fearless eyes. He excused himself early, something he never did, and drove back to that neighborhood. The streets were cracked, the buildings worn down. Children played with makeshift toys in the alleyways. It was a world far removed from the gleaming towers where Marcus usually spent his days. He parked his sleek black car and walked quietly through the narrow streets, unsure of what he was even looking for. And then, as if destiny wanted to answer his question, he saw her. Aisha was sitting on the apartment steps with her baby brother in her lap, humming softly to keep him calm. She looked up, startled, when she noticed the tall man in the expensive coat. Her eyes widened, recognition flashing instantly. She stood quickly, embarrassed, as if worried he had come to demand payment. I don't have any money yet," she stammered nervously. "But I promise, when I grow up, I'll find you and give you back what you gave me." Her words were so earnest, so filled with childlike determination, that Marcus felt something twist inside his chest. He knelt down slowly, lowering himself to her level. "Little one," he said gently, "I don't want your money. I just wanted to see how you and your family are doing." Aisha blinked at him, unsure whether to believe it. She hugged her baby brother a little tighter. "We're okay," she said softly, though her voice betrayed the truth. Her mother appeared at the door, cautious, her face tight with suspicion. She had seen men like Marcus before, rich, powerful, untouchable. People like him didn't come to neighborhoods like this without a reason. "What do you want with my children?" she asked firmly, her voice edged with protectiveness. Marcus paused, realizing how his presence must look. "Nothing, ma'am," he replied sincerely. "Your daughter, she reminded me of something I had forgotten. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." The woman studied him for a long moment, then finally gave a small nod, though her eyes never lost their wariness. Aisha, however, smiled brightly, her earlier fear melting away. "See, Mama, he's the kind man who gave me the milk. I told you I'd pay him back one day." Her words made Marcus chuckle quietly for the first time in years. There was a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in so long. It almost scared him. He stood, adjusting his coat, and looked at the crumbling building behind them. Something inside him whispered that this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. That night, as Marcus drove home, he found himself wrestling with thoughts he had long buried. He had always believed that survival meant hardening your heart, that compassion was a weakness, that money was the only thing that truly mattered. But that little girl had shattered those beliefs with nothing but her honesty. For the first time, Marcus felt the urge to do something not for profit, not for recognition, but simply because it was right. He didn't know it yet, but Aisha's innocent promise was about to change not just her life, but his as well. Days turned into weeks, but Marcus couldn't stay away. He found himself driving back to that worn-down neighborhood more often than he admitted, each time under the excuse of just passing by. But the truth was different. He wanted to see her. He wanted to see the little girl with the brave words and the impossible promise. Each time he arrived, he noticed more details: the broken windows covered with cardboard, the creaking staircase that led to Aisha's apartment, the way her mother's tired eyes softened only when she looked at her children. On one visit, Marcus saw Aisha struggling with a heavy bucket of water she had fetched from the communal pump at the end of the street. Her tiny frame bent under the weight, but she refused to give up. Marcus stepped forward without thinking, taking the bucket from her hands. "You'll hurt yourself carrying something this heavy," he said. Aisha looked up, surprised, but quickly straightened her back. "I can do it. I have to help Mama." Her voice was firm, determined. Marcus stared at her, stunned once again by the strength packed into such a small body. "Still," he replied softly, "sometimes it's okay to accept help." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his luxury penthouse, haunted by the contrast between his life and theirs. He had more than enough, yet there was an emptiness money couldn't fill. They had almost nothing, yet Aisha carried herself with a pride and courage that humbled him. For the first time in years, Marcus found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about life, success, and happiness. One Saturday morning, he made a decision. He drove to their neighborhood not just to watch from a distance, but to knock on their door. Aisha opened it, her face lighting up the moment she saw him. "It's you," she exclaimed. "Mama, it's the kind man again." Her mother appeared, cautious as always, but she didn't stop him from entering this time. Marcus stepped inside, and for the first time, he saw the full reality of their world. The apartment was small, cramped, with peeling paint on the walls and a leaky faucet dripping endlessly into a cracked sink. A thin curtain separated the living area from the tiny space where the children slept. There was no table set with food, no signs of comfort. Marcus's heart clenched. He turned to Aisha's mother. "How are you managing?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, clearly torn between pride and desperation. Finally, she admitted, "I clean offices at night. It barely pays the rent, and sometimes there isn't enough left for food. But we get by." Marcus glanced at Aisha, who was busy trying to soothe her brother. "She shouldn't have to carry so much," he murmured almost to himself. The mother stiffened. "We don't want pity," she said sharply, her dignity shining even through exhaustion. "We've survived this long without charity." Marcus respected her strength, but he also couldn't ignore the ache in his chest. "I don't offer pity," he replied gently. "I offer opportunity." Over the following weeks, Marcus began to quietly extend his help. He arranged for groceries to be delivered anonymously, though Aisha was sharp enough to guess who was behind it. One evening she confronted him directly. "Was it you who sent the food?" she asked, her eyes narrowing with suspicion, though her lips twitched with a hidden smile. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And if it was?" Aisha crossed her arms, her voice firm. "Then I'll just have to pay you back for that too. Someday." Marcus laughed, a real, warm laugh that startled even him. "At this rate, little one, you'll spend your whole life paying me back." She grinned mischievously. "Then I guess I'll just have to live a long, long time." Her innocence pierced through his hardened heart, and for the first time in years, Marcus felt alive. Spending time with Aisha became the highlight of his days. She told him stories about her dreams, about how she wanted to become a doctor one day to help children like her brother. She spoke of building a house for her mama, with walls that didn't leak and a kitchen that always had food. Every dream was spoken with such conviction that Marcus found himself believing in them too. But it wasn't just Aisha who changed. Marcus began to change as well. His assistants noticed how he no longer barked orders with the same coldness. His business partners noticed how he sometimes paused during meetings, as if thinking about something or someone far more important than profits. He even started refusing deals that hurt the poor, something unheard of for the ruthless tycoon. People whispered about what had happened to Marcus Landon, but no one knew the truth. A little girl's promise had awakened his soul. One evening, as Marcus prepared to leave their apartment after another visit, Aisha ran after him down the steps. She tugged at his sleeve and looked up at him with wide eyes. "Why do you keep helping us?" she asked softly. "You're rich. You don't need us. People like you don't come to places like this." Marcus paused, caught off guard by her question. He crouched down, meeting her gaze. "Because once," he admitted quietly, "I was like you. Hungry, lost, forgotten, and nobody helped me. Nobody cared. I swore that when I made it, I'd never look back. But you reminded me of the boy I used to be, and I couldn't walk away." Aisha listened silently, her small hand still clutching his sleeve. Then, with the wisdom of someone far older than her years, she whispered, "Maybe God sent you back here, so you wouldn't forget who you really are." Marcus felt a lump rise in his throat, and for once, he had no answer. That night, as he drove away, he realized she was right. And for the first time in decades, Marcus Landon prayed. Not for wealth, not for success, but for the strength to become the man that little girl believed he could be. Marcus Landon had never been the type of man to linger on emotions. His entire empire had been built on precision, numbers, and ruthless logic. Yet now, emotion drove his every thought. He found himself planning ways to ease Aisha's burdens, to give her the childhood she deserved. But he also knew he had to be careful. Her mother's pride was as strong as Aisha's determination, and if he barged into their lives with money and power, he risked pushing them away. So he chose subtlety. The first change came when he quietly arranged for Aisha's baby brother to be seen by the best pediatrician in the city. At first, her mother refused. "We can't afford this," she insisted, shaking her head. But when Marcus assured her it was already taken care of, her defenses weakened. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice suspicious but weary. Marcus looked her in the eye and answered honestly, "Because no child should suffer when I have the power to help." After that, the boy received the treatment he needed, and his health began to improve steadily. The second change came in Aisha's education. One afternoon, Marcus asked her what her favorite subject in school was. She laughed shyly and admitted, "I don't go to school anymore. Mama couldn't pay the fees." The words hit him like a hammer. A child as bright and hopeful as Aisha, robbed of education because of money? It ignited a fire in Marcus. The next day, he personally called the principal of the best private school in the city. "Enroll her," he ordered. "All expenses will be covered." When Aisha found out, her jaw dropped. "Me? In that school?" she gasped. But I can't even afford the shoes the other kids wear." Marcus knelt beside her, his voice gentle but firm. "You don't need to fit in with them. You need to shine as yourself. You have dreams, little one, and education will help you reach them." Her mother hesitated at first, but Aisha's excitement was unstoppable. The following week, she walked through the tall gates of her new school, her eyes wide with wonder. She didn't have the fancy backpack or polished shoes the other children had, but she had something more powerful: belief. And every day after school, she would run to Marcus's car waiting outside, breathless as she told him everything she had learned. "Today I read a whole storybook by myself," she exclaimed one afternoon. "And guess what? I got the highest score in math." Her joy was infectious, and Marcus found himself smiling in ways he hadn't in decades. But not everyone was happy with these changes. In Marcus's corporate world, whispers grew louder. His business partners noticed his increasing absences, his sudden softness. One night, over dinner, a colleague confronted him. "Marcus, what's going on with you? You're losing focus. Is this about that little girl people say you've been seen with?" The tone dripped with judgment. Marcus's eyes hardened. "That little girl," he replied coldly, "has more courage in her small frame than half the men I've done business with. Don't mistake kindness for weakness." The colleague scoffed, but Marcus didn't care. For once, money wasn't the only thing that defined him. Yet even as he poured more of himself into Aisha's world, Marcus faced battles within his own heart. He had always believed that people only cared about what they could gain. He had been abandoned as a child, forced to claw his way to success with no one by his side. But Aisha, she cared without asking for anything. Even when he bought her new clothes for school, she insisted, "I'll pay you back, mister. I don't know how yet, but I will." Her innocence disarmed him. Every time she said it, Marcus felt something crack open in his soul. One evening, as he dropped her home after school, Aisha suddenly asked, "Do you have a family?" The question caught him off guard. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "No," he said finally, his voice low. "Not anymore." She tilted her head curiously. "Why not?" Marcus hesitated. He could have brushed it off, but for some reason, he wanted to tell her the truth. "Because when I was your age, my father left. My mother worked herself sick trying to care for me and my brother. And when she died, I was left alone. My brother, he didn't make it." His voice faltered for the first time. Silence filled the car. Aisha's small hand suddenly reached over and touched his. "That's why you help us, isn't it?" she said softly. "Because you know what it feels like." Marcus swallowed hard, his throat tight. "Yes," he admitted. "That's why." For a long moment, neither spoke. But in that silence, something unspoken passed between them. A bond stronger than charity, stronger than obligation. A bond built on shared pain and newfound hope. But as with all stories of change, darkness loomed. One evening, as Marcus was leaving their neighborhood, he noticed a group of men watching him. Their eyes followed his expensive car with a hunger that made his instincts flare. Later that week, Aisha's mother pulled him aside. "Mr. Landon," she said firmly, "people are starting to talk. They wonder why a rich man like you keeps coming here. Some say you're trying to buy us. Some say worse. I don't want trouble for my children." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Let them talk," he said. But deep down, he knew this was more than gossip. His presence had painted a target on Aisha's family, and trouble was closer than any of them realized. That night, as Marcus stood by his penthouse window looking out at the glittering city lights, he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't just give Aisha milk, groceries, or school. He had to give her something bigger, something permanent, something that would protect her from the world that had once swallowed him whole. And he silently vowed that no matter the cost, he would keep that promise. The weeks that followed tested Marcus in ways he hadn't expected. He had thought kindness would be simple, a matter of giving, of helping. But kindness, he realized, carried weight. The more he became part of Aisha's life, the more he understood the risks. Whispers turned into stares, stares into rumors. Some neighbors were grateful, but others were suspicious. And danger had a way of finding the vulnerable. One evening, as Marcus walked Aisha back from school, a man stepped out of the shadows, blocking their path. His clothes were ragged, his eyes sharp with envy. "Big man with a fancy car," the stranger sneered. "What are you doing here, pretending to be one of us? Trying to play hero?" Marcus instinctively moved Aisha behind him, his shoulders stiff. "I'm here for her," he said simply. The man's laugh was bitter. "For her? What's she to you? Just another street kid. They're everywhere. You think saving one will make you feel better about yourself?" The word stung, but Marcus didn't flinch. He met the man's gaze and answered, "She's not just another child. She's Aisha, and she has more value than you'll ever see." With that, he guided Aisha past the man, who muttered curses under his breath but didn't follow. When they finally reached her door, Aisha looked up at Marcus with a quiet determination. "You shouldn't have to protect me," she said softly. "I should be strong enough to protect myself." Marcus crouched down and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're already stronger than most people I know. But sometimes, strength means letting others stand with you." That night, Marcus realized the truth. Protection wasn't enough. He had to create a future for her, a foundation she could stand on long after he was gone. So he began making calls, not to his usual business partners, but to lawyers, trustees, and advisors. Slowly, he built something new, an education fund in Aisha's name, a trust that would grow as she grew, enough to pay for her schooling, her dreams, even her family's stability. But it wasn't just money. Marcus started mentoring her, guiding her not as a benefactor, but as a father figure. He taught her about choices, about courage, about never letting the world convince her she was less than anyone else. One evening, Aisha sat across from him in his car, her notebook clutched tightly in her hands. I wrote a story, she said shyly. Marcus smiled. Read it to me. She opened the notebook and began. It was about a little girl who asked for milk when she had nothing to give, and a man who gave it to her. But in her story, the girl grew up to become a doctor, helping children all over the world. That's me, she said proudly when she finished. That's what I'll be. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Yes, he whispered. That's exactly who you'll be. But life has a way of testing even the strongest promises. One winter night, Marcus collapsed in his office. The doctors told him the truth he had long ignored. Years of stress, poor health, and solitude had taken their toll. He didn't have as much time as he thought. For the first time, Marcus felt fear, not for himself, but for Aisha. Would she be safe when he was gone? Would she remember the lessons he tried to give her? Would her promise to pay him back weigh on her small shoulders for the rest of her life? He couldn't let that happen. So he called her and her mother to his home one final time. The grand penthouse seemed overwhelming to them, but Marcus greeted them with warmth. He handed Aisha a small envelope. This, he said, is for you. Inside is the proof of everything I've set up, your education, your home, your future. You'll never have to worry about food or school again. Aisha looked at the envelope, then at him, her eyes wide with confusion. But I promised I'd pay you back when I grew up. Her voice shook with desperation. Marcus knelt down, his aging face softening as he placed his hands on her shoulders. Listen to me, little one. You don't owe me a thing. The way you've already changed my life, the way you reminded me of who I really am, you've already paid me back 1,000 times over. His voice broke slightly, but he continued. One day, when you're grown, you'll help someone else the way I helped you. That's how you'll keep your promise. Tears spilled down Aisha's cheeks as she threw her arms around him. I'll never forget you, she whispered fiercely. Marcus closed his eyes, holding her close. And I'll never forget you either. Years later, long after Marcus Landon's name was etched into foundations and charities across the city, a young woman in a white doctor's coat walked through the halls of a busy children's hospital. Her hair was neatly braided, her eyes steady with purpose, and around her neck hung a small locket Marcus had given her before he passed. She was known not just for her skill, but for her compassion, the kind of compassion that made her stay late with a sick child or hold the hand of a parent too scared to hope. And whenever someone asked her why she worked so tirelessly, she would smile softly and say, because once, when I was a little girl, I promised I would pay someone back when I grew up. And the best way to keep that promise is to never stop giving. In the end, it wasn't just about milk. It was about a promise, a child's promise that awakened a broken man's heart, and a man's promise that gave a child the wings to fly. Together, they proved that sometimes the smallest words can spark the greatest change. And those words still echoed, even years later. I promise to pay when I grow up. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in the millionaire's place? Your support means the world, and it helps me keep bringing you more life-changing stories.